I'm Mark Rushall. I'm a coach and strategist to the British sailing team and author of RYA Tactics, which is, of course, available now from my website. After the last session, several people asked me to elaborate a little bit on the 3 circles model for simplifying strategic decision making. I thought the best way to do that would be to share a real example with you. So I'm going to start with that for the first part of this briefing. Last week, Simon Rowell, our Met expert, discussed the concept of atmospheric stability. So as with the last strategy chat, for the second section, I'm going to take those concepts and try to answer the question, so what does that mean to me? First, the 3 circles. Everyone remembers the races they got right. So I'm going to take you back to the last race of the 5.5 metre Spring Championship at Torbay on Lake Garda a few years ago. If you've not heard of a 5.5 metre, it was an Olympic class until 1968. And if you think of an Etchells that is 10 times the price and 3 times as many strings to pull, you won't be far off. The wind had been pretty disappointing for most of the week, so on the last day, we got up early to race in the last of the Peeler. That's the cold wind that drains down from the mountains when the land to the north has cooled down overnight. So on the run to the start, we could see and feel that there was consistently more wind on the right-hand side of the beat, and it was still there pre-start. The 5.5 metre doesn't go any faster in 2 knots more wind, but it does point a lot higher. With the shifts fairly small at the bottom of the course, that was going to be the key factor for the first half of the beat. If I'm chasing the gains, remember, I have to commit to getting the boat to the favoured part of the racetrack as quickly as possible. Though the start line was well port biased, these boats are so even in speed that even a perfect pin-end start would have seen us pinned out to the left. We would not have been able to tack until the boats to windward went. So knowing where the focus was made the starting choice really easy. Start to wind of the majority, tack early, and be prepared to duck anyone further up the line that we couldn't cross. As we started to get out to the right-hand side of the beat, we could feel the effect of the obstructions ashore increasing the size and the frequency of the shifts. The land heating was possibly contributing to this. We were already in the area of more wind. The opportunity now was to sail the shortest course by tacking on the shifts. Focus was now on the compass, making sure that each time the numbers dipped substantially below mean, we slid onto the other tack. Each time we came back onto starboard on a nice righty, we could see we'd made a nice gain on the pack to the right. We could see we'd made a nice gain on the pack on the left. But the other boats at this point were not impacting our decisions. Obviously they weren't. With the windward mark close to the shore, the shifts got bigger and more random in the top quarter of the beat. The danger now with blindly following the compass is that we might find ourselves outside the ley line with no way back. Big random shifts mean big opportunities for the boats behind to get back into the game. That's where the positioning hat comes out. Crossing the majority of the fleet when the opportunity comes puts all of those early gains in the bank. Keeping inside the shift lines and leading the fleet back towards the middle keeps the exposure low and opportunities high. If you want to remind yourself of my positioning rules, you will find them on my website, by the way. So our focus for that last part of the beat was on the other boats, the windward mark and the ley lines, nothing else. Well, we all love it when a plan comes together. Winning the race, of course, made us feel like tactical geniuses. What the model had given us, though, was an absolute clarity at all times on what we were trying to achieve, where our forward focus was, and how we'd react to the distractions like boats, shifts, and gusts as they came along. We started off in gains mode, then we shifted to shifts mode, and then finally it was all about positioning. So I'd never raced in the Peeler before, and when I got home, I checked out Stuart Walker's book, The Sailor's Wind. It was Stuart's book Positioning that gave me the inspiration for the 3 circles model. But the Sailor's Wind is more of a venue guide based on his experiences of racing at various locations around the world. Here's his recommendation for racing in the Peeler from Torbay. As you can see, it's a good job that none of the other competitors had read that. So this scenario fits nicely into the matrix that Simon showed you last week. That cold descending peeler breeze is definitely a stable one. There's no mechanism for any vertical mixing, but the geography means that directionally it is unsteady. Okay, so I hope that example has given you some insight into how you might use the three circles model. As I said last time, there's no magic in a model. It's just a way of making sense and simplifying a complex situation and encouraging us to focus on the right cues at the right time. Everyone's brain works differently, and the key to unlocking your potential is to find one that works for you. How would you have approached that race, given no prior knowledge or information, just based on what you could see and feel on the day on the way to the start? As before, do send any questions in through the usual social media routes, and we'll do our best to address them. So now some thoughts on stability. First, a quick recap on some of the things Simon talked about last time. Stability is about how the wind we sail in connects with the gradient wind above. In a perfectly stable system, the only way the wind from above gets down to us is through friction through each layer of air. Air is pretty slippery, so it's a pretty inefficient way of getting any power down to us. In an unstable system, the wind higher up mixes with the wind below it. More wind gets down to it, but as you can see from Simon's diagram, it's a pretty chaotic process. So the wind we sail in is likely to be more shifty and more gusty. Of course, sailing in real life is not a perfect world, and we never really sail in perfectly stable or perfectly unstable conditions. We're always somewhere in between. But things that suggest the atmosphere will be more stable are high pressure systems, surface colder than the air, thermal breezes, particularly a sea breeze. Things that suggest it'll be more unstable vertically will be low pressure systems, surface hotter than the air, clouds and patches of clouds in evidence. Note that a summer's gradient wind day might begin stable with high pressure and cold surface, but become unstable as the surface heats up. Or, of course, if a sea breeze develops, it would remain stable. So that's the theory. What does it all mean to me as a sailor? Here's one way of looking at it. If I know that the atmosphere is stable, I can think of my wind as coming from directly ahead. If the boats ahead of me have sailed into a calm spot or a patch of pressure upwind of me, it'll probably find its way down to me eventually. If there's some interesting land feature upwind, it's very likely that it will affect the wind in a systematic and repeatable way. Whether the wind's curling around a headland causing a wind bend, we've got compression along a coastline, or even wind being more backed as you get closer to the shore. I can learn a lot about swapping what's happening next in these conditions simply by looking at where the wind's coming from. And if I found a helpful effect before the start, it's much more likely to be there at start time. However, if I know that the atmosphere is unstable, my confidence in just looking at wind is reduced. That patch of pressure might get to me, but it might be gone by the time I get there. The next gust and shift caused by the wind mixing down from above, either through heating or from downdrafts around clouds, may be enough to mask or even overcome a small land effect. So I'll need to be more open-minded, keep looking for cues in the sky, and think pretty hard about the risks before nailing all my hopes on a land feature that the textbooks tell me that'll be there, but I haven't tested for. When you're racing in Portland Harbour in a southwesterly, you could be racing in a fairly stable atmospheric condition or a seriously unstable one. See if you can think back to races where the famous Portland wind bend either did its job or failed to materialize, and see if you can match that to the conditions at the time. So that's all from me. I hope I've given you a couple of other things to think about when using the forecast to help you shape your strategy. And again, to use the time you have before the start to check out your theory and give you confidence in your plan. As I said earlier, if you do have any questions, send them through and we'll do our best to answer them. Thanks for watching.